yourselves. But if I don't answer your question, it's because the chat isn't even on my screen until it's time for our discussion. So today we're talking about how to bring the sacred back into lovemaking. And this is a really interesting discussion because our world is so filled with confusion around sex. On the one hand, we're told that sex is a huge deal. Don't do it. Whatever you do, wait until marriage. Like it's this great, big, hairy deal. And then society, once you actually kind of get over that barrier and you're an adult or whatever, and you start looking around society and you look around Hollywood, you look around what goes on with our parents' generation, all that, and you go, yeah, but it actually isn't a big deal. In fact, it's treated like dirt. It's treated like it's dirty. It's treated like it's about power and control, and they use sex to sell, everything basically. So you're kind of like, so why is this such a big deal? Like, I don't understand. And I remember even myself, when I was young, I didn't have sex for quite a while, and then when I finally did, it was just a boyfriend in university. Afterwards, I kind of went, what are they talking about? Why are they making it into this great big deal? And at the same time, in my heart of hearts, I knew it was a big deal. I knew that there were supposed to be fireworks and amazing, and I was supposed to be a changed person after this. I knew this in my soul, even though I'd never seen any example of this anywhere. I mean, my parents couldn't talk about it. Their friends couldn't talk about it. My friends didn't know any more than I did or what they read in Cosmopolitan. And Hollywood certainly didn't tell us anything. And even if we listened to sort of sex shows, when I was a teenager, there was this great show called Sex with Sue or something like that. And it was Sue Johansson was this great sex therapist, and she used to have these great shows on the radio. But again, it was just about the mechanics of sex. It wasn't teaching us how to have fireworks and intimacy and true connection or anything like that. But deep inside, I knew that we were missing something. And then we have all the confusion from the church. And we're told sex is sacred. This is a sacred act. And then so you can only do it in marriage. And then depending on what church we belong to, even if you do it in marriage, you only do it to procreate because everything else is a sin. And you're like, so suddenly something that is sacred is sinful. And this creates such confusion inside of our soul. Like, and that is an idea that is internalized more than we think. Like we think, no, I don't think that. But is it okay to sit and talk about sex in public like this? When I first began teaching Tantra, I was really worried that people would just think that, oh, I'm just all about the sex and all that. And I wanted to scream from the rooftops, no, Tantra is more than sex. It's about spirituality, to the point that I almost didn't want to talk about the sex, because sex can't be married with something as amazing and spiritual and sacred as Tantra, which of course is a huge argument in the Tantric world, that you cannot bring these two things together. But this is the problem. This is what creates the difficulty within us. So then the reality is sex is a part of our life. It's a part of our human experience. So why not make it sacred? Why not make it epic? And this is one of the big problems, is that Tantra is not just about sex. Obviously, it's not even about sex. It's about actually connecting our divine self with our physical self. That's what Tantra is. It's about bringing the divine into every aspect of our life. And intimacy happens to be one of the most broken aspects of our life. So when we study Tantra, that part of our life heals and becomes everything that deep down we knew was possible. So the reason sex becomes sacred or intimacy becomes sacred is because we become sacred. We become connected to the divine, to God, to the consciousness, to the unmanifest, non-dual reality, however you want to understand it. We become that, and therefore, how we talk becomes that, how we make love becomes that. It just becomes our entire reality. So when you actually look up the original word or the original meaning of the word sacred, it means connected to the gods. And it's funny how in our society today, we're not even allowed to say that because this word, God, has become so misused and so defined in so many ways that, as someone who's been teaching spiritual studies for a long, long time, I've talked around this word endlessly. I think I probably know more synonyms for the word God than anything else because you just don't want to divide the group. You don't want anyone to feel like they don't relate, because as a human being, we're meant to be divine, infinite, cosmic, however we understand that, and physical. And this is the tantric path. If there's a path of tantra, that's a whole discussion. But the journey is to just simply fully merge the divine and the physical. So now the question of our talk today becomes, how do we do that in lovemaking? How do we merge the divine and the physical in this wonderful act? So the first question we have to ask ourselves is why we're making love. Why are we having sex? We have to look at the intention. That's the number one. That's the container for the whole experience. So because our society is so focused on the physical in every aspect of our life, we think that money is success. We think that we can value ourselves and our time with something like money. We think that, the size of our house matters, or what our partner looks like, or what we look like matter, or anything. We have all that. We're very focused in the physical. So therefore, our intention around something like sex is also often very physical. So maybe my intention when having sex is just simply to get off, right? I just want a release. I want to feel good. That's what I want. Or maybe I want to have an orgasm. Maybe I just want to feel good. I want that expansive experience in a world that is just kind of crappy right now or something, right? And I'm not judging any of these. There's a place for everything, right? They're just not going to actually lead us to a sacred experience, right? Sometimes we want to have sex because we want to feel loved. We want to know that this other person cares about us. We want to know that this other person is connected to us. And we want to feel that attention. We want to feel that connection. This too will not lead us to anything sacred because it's based in the assumption that we're broken, that we are somehow not whole completely unto ourselves, right? When we really have this feeling of the divine within us, how can we possibly be broken, right? How can someone else make us feel more loved than we already do, right? And this is why the journey of Tantra, there's a long, long experience, or I want to say path, but it's not really a path, but it's many, many, many experiences that bring us to this wholeness, which then leads us to these wonderful sacred experiences. Sometimes we have sex because we're bored. We're just like, nothing on TV tonight. You want to, or maybe I'm bored in life and I just want to do something that's exciting and interesting and makes me feel sexy and powerful and, connected to lightning bolts or something, right? Just bored. Maybe this would be fun, right? And in a bit darker way, some people have sex for power. They do it in a relationship. They actually literally use the other person as an object for their desires. in a million ways. And sometimes it's just sheer expectation. We're in a relationship, we're married, we're committed, so you kind of have to have sex with me. It's just that's the agreement we've got here. It's just sheer expectation. So you can imagine that none of these intentions are going to lead us to a sacred experience, right? They're all just physical. There's no greater intention to them except physical release, physical pleasure, physical connection, but nothing really more. The other challenge that comes is that because we can't talk about sex, we can't talk about intimacy, we can't talk about these things, it isn't talked about. And so when we're young, we're told not to do it. If you do it, use a condom and be really careful because you're just going to get some kind of nasty disease. They've added that to the school system now. And that's all they really learn about is all the different STDs you can get, which is, again, such a strange dichotomy between, oh, so much disease and sacred. Like, how do these two things marry together? And we expect our teenagers to ever have anything close to something like sacred intimacy, So what happens is because we're not taught anything, we default to kind of a procreative model of sex, where the whole goal is everything we've just said, getting off, having an orgasm, feeling pleasure, all these things. But it's just procreative, which is awesome. And we're going to talk about a bit more about that later. And this doesn't matter what our gender is, what our orientation is. It's the same thing. It's rub the bodies together, create pleasure, and hopefully both people have an orgasm. It's just a model of procreation. Whether or not we want to have babies or not, or whether we're male and female or something, it's irrelevant. But all of these things just lead to a physical experience. It's kind of like a great game of racquetball or something, right? So the first thing we have to know is what our intention is. Imagine our intention is something completely different. Imagine that we know that we are divine. We know that we are fully divine, fully physical. Even if we haven't embodied it yet, maybe it's just something that we sense, or we know, or we read it, or someone taught it, and we said, yeah, I believe that. So even if we haven't fully embodied it, it's okay. Because if our intention is whatever that little flicker of divinity I feel inside of me, I'd like to bring that in to a sacred moment with another person. We don't have to have arrived. We just need to know that it's possible. So now we imagine that we are these two divine souls. And maybe our intention is to see what happens when these two divine souls merge, right? And we use the bodies through touch to create a magnetic connection, to join our electrical bodies together, to actually have this incredible experience together that is actually bringing all of our beings together, not just our physical, but every aspect, our energetic selves, our electrical selves, our cosmic selves, everything. And we bring it all together. And that sounds very complicated, but it all just stems from the intention. When we simply say, I want to bring it all together, no matter how much study or learning you've ever done, you'll just slow down. You'll pay more attention. You'll notice nuances. You'll notice subtleties in the other person. You'll hear intuitive guidance. You'll just naturally slow down, right? That's why Tantra is not so much of a path as it's an experience. We just have to have the right container and the right intention. Another intention could be the desire to make love energy. One of my students a long time ago, he was taking my online course, my foundations course in Tantra. And he sent me a note saying, do you think that making love actually could be that we make love energy in the world, that every time two people come together and make love, that love energy flows out from them. What if that's why we made love? That we're just, you know what? Let's put some love energy into the world. Imagine how different it would be. Imagine how different every choice would be that we make within the lovemaking. What if our intention is to experience oneness? You know, when we look at the masculine and feminine, and I'm not talking about male, female, but the masculine giving to the feminine receiving, or the masculine structure to the feminine chaos. And when we bring this duality back together, then we come into oneness, right? This God space is a oneness, divinity, omniscience, however you understand it. This is a oneness. We exist in duality, you and I. We are two people experiencing each other right now. When these two come together in their polar opposites, again, not gendered, just in the energy of the masculine, feminine, the yin and yang, and we truly join, we experience oneness. We experience bliss. Imagine that was your intention. That would change everything. Again, you don't even have to know anything about Tantra or intimacy. You just have to have that intention. Or maybe the intention is to create life. Maybe the intention is to have a child. Can you imagine, like, consciously saying, I feel so much love for you. I feel so much connection and so much joy. And I feel that there's a soul that wants to come in. Let's make love. Let's create the space and the container for this soul to come in. Can you imagine? Like, what an intention. How different everything would be if we looked at it that way. You know? So intention is really the number one step. The second thing is we have to look at the person we're making love with. Is this a person who wants the same thing as you do? Do they want to have any of these sacred intentions? Or do they have a different intention? Because this is a merging of two. If in this merging, one person's like, I'm just tired, I just am not into it. We can't have a sacred experience. If the other person has any other, and I'm going to, for some reason, I have the word nefarious in my head, but if they have any other kind of intention, it isn't going to work, because the person who desires the sacred space needs to be able to open their hearts. And the other person needs to want to open their hearts. And it's in that vulnerability that all the magic happens. Well, if the other person doesn't want to or isn't capable right now of this complete open-hearted love, then the sacredness won't happen, right? We'll just default to, maybe good sex, but the sacredness won't happen. And this is really important because oftentimes, because we have this pattern that we have to, kind of have to love the one we're with, right? Now I have that song in my head, but that's what we have to do no matter what. So then the question becomes, well, what if my partner doesn't want it? Or what if they're not interested? Well, this is a function of the relationship. It isn't something that one person can just do, because then it really becomes something of just simply having a sacred experience on our own. Maybe that's not what you're going to have with that person, because it is the merging of two sides. The third thing is to be able to make love in a way that you are actually open to infinity. Can you imagine? Right? So, because what we're doing is we're bringing in the divine, and the divine, infinite, eternal, like there's no actual words for it, but whatever that is, we're bringing that in to this very interesting lovemaking. Well, that means we have to be open to it. If we come in with any kind of expectation that I want to have an orgasm, or I want the other person to have an orgasm, or I want this to happen, or I want that to happen, or I want to try this out. We're bringing our physical limitations into an experience, and then all of our intention will now just to be to meet that goal. And it's like, we're swimming in this ocean of possibilities, but we've come in with an agenda, and here's what's going to happen. Sacred ritual, sacred experiences are always in full surrender, full trust, because we're opening ourselves to something different. We're opening ourselves to the universe, to the divine without, the divine within, however you see it. So we have to go in without expectation. And it's more fun than you think, right? Like you think, well, how would we know what to do? But that's the joy. It becomes an exploration. It becomes like slowing down your whole being and kind of listening within. Like we study spirituality, we study meditation, we study prayer, we repeat mantras, we do all these things to clear our minds. This is where we get to apply it. This is where spirituality becomes real. So then you slow way down, you actually gaze into the eyes of this other person and you ask, what's next? Maybe you have a vision of something or an idea and you flow into it and you just flow together in this entirely different space. There are no rules. There are no tricks. There are no techniques. Techniques all belong in the physical world, in the limited world. They don't belong in infinity. There's no such thing. It is literally an eternal expansion, which is kind of why the old tantrics and stuff always had a funny look on their face, because they knew that they're playing in infinity. There's nothing limited about this world. The fourth thing that we really need to have is love. And I don't mean the kind of love we're told, that, I'm in this relationship and we are in love and we are committed and not that. Like a genuine love for this other human being, genuine connection, genuine. When you look into their eyes, you see their soul, you see their sparkle, you see the divinity within them, and your heart just opens to this other person, that you genuinely have love. This is very important. And it doesn't have to be a committed relationship or anything like that. It can just simply be the beautiful connection between two souls. But we have to have that. Like love literally is how human beings connect. So we could have all the intentions in the world of, I want us to merge together and experience oneness and all that. But if I don't feel love for the person with me, how magnetically connected can we possibly be? Because that's what happens, right? These two sides come together and a magnetism is created. And then maybe you touch and this magnetism is increased, right? The toucher and the touchee and all these kind of things. And the magnetism draws your energies together. And that's what pulls you into oneness. So if there's no magnetism, there's no love, there's no connection, the magic isn't going to happen. And the last thing, just to mention about that, is to have a lightness about it, to have a playfulness about it. And this doesn't mean silly. I don't mean, jumping around and being silly and making funny sounds. I mean to be light about it, ease, to know that we're all just playing here and we're just exploring and we're just seeing what's out there. And if something comes up, because we are humans, we've all got stuff. We've got little funny triggers that we thought we'd healed. And all of a sudden we come into this beautiful, safe space. And suddenly something is said or something happens or someone moves a certain way. And something comes up inside of us. And all of a sudden our brain has time traveled to another time that was not so joyful. and this has come up. And perhaps there's tears or other emotions, and everybody flows together, and then you just hold each other, right? Sacred intimacy is not just about having sex. It's a sacred connection. It's a sacred love, And again, without putting any kind of construct on that, like a sacred love that survives all things and lives till you die, like not all that stuff. A sacred love between two divine beings. And so the playfulness and the lightness allows all things to flow. There's no walls up. There's no rules. There's no nothing. It's anything goes. And I'm truly really good with it. So the beautiful thing about desiring a sacred connection in lovemaking or anything like this is you really don't have to know anything. We can study Tantra. We can read books. We can do all kinds of great things. But you could have a sacred lovemaking experience simply being in a room with someone and you were both filled with gratitude. That's it. Like to fill your heart with gratitude for this other person, to think, wow, like you're in my life and you'll open yourself with me. I am so incredibly thankful. And then you do this beautiful, gentle dance together, right? You don't have to have tricks and anything else. You just need to have this lovely gratitude. And the crazy thing is, as this goes on, magical things will happen in intimacy, in sexual lovemaking. Crazy stuff. As human beings slow down and we just actually connect with each other, suddenly we're having full body orgasms and we're having these crazy sensations through our bodies that we're like, I have no idea how that happened. I've never experienced that before. What was that? And then, of course, you try to repeat it. And it's not so easy to repeat because it just came out of this lovely thing. Because this is the beautiful thing about the study of Tantra, or the whole idea of it. We're already divine, right? It's not that I have to develop my divine nature. We are divine right now. We just have to tune into it. And to tune into it, we just have to slow down and just sort of tap into that loving gratitude for this fascinating assignment we've been given. And then sacredness is easy. I'm going to put my glasses on. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I would love to hear. Hey, Natalie. Hey, Alice. Oh, wait a moment. And maybe we don't have questions. It's all good. Can you talk more about something you have mentioned, which is that you don't believe a couple needs to share spirituality to be compatible? I'm wondering if you can talk more about that. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. A lot of times when we start studying spirituality, we think that if I'm looking for a partner, I want to find someone else who is also spiritual. And it's a bit of a trap because There are a lot of people in the world who are really open-hearted, lovely, amazing people, but they're not interested in studying spirituality. They're not interested in meditation. They're not interested in any of these things. They're not wired that way, but they are amazing lovers, right? They're often very grounded in their bodies. You know, I do these energy grid readings with people, and some people are very wired through the sixth, seventh, fifth chakras. So these people love chatting about spirituality, right? But then there's people who are very wired through the first, second, and third chakras. And these people are very naturally grounded. So they do things with their hands. They're very physical in the world. They're very connected in nature. And a lot of those people don't like to discuss spirituality. It's not a thing. But walking in the woods is a meditation for them. Building a deck is a meditation. These things are working with their hands is a meditation. But they're not going to talk about philosophy with you. And what's beautiful is oftentimes when we get together in a couple like that, it's really honoring our differences that makes the lovemaking epic, right? It's when we are different and we allow ourselves to be different. And we allow ourselves to, if I'm all up here in the philosophy and I'm with someone who's super grounded in their body, it really has incredible magnetism, the differences, right? And and they don't have to be opposite, but they definitely don't have to be the same. So we have to be kind of careful about that. Yeah. So both people have to have the same intention. I want a spiritual experience, and I've been setting that intention, but my partner is not in that space. Yeah, that's it is a great challenge. But what is also true is that we are always shifting and changing. Everybody, even whether we study spirituality, we want a spiritual experience, everybody is always shifting. And when we make love with someone, we do affect each other. We're not islands. Like, we would have to be extremely cold to not be affected by someone we make love with or have sex with, or however we want to say it. So what's really interesting is when you have the intention to have a spiritual experience. So what does that mean? Like, if we take the words away from having a spiritual experience, like, what are we really saying? I want to feel amazing love for this person. I want to feel my divine self flowing in this experience. So maybe you shift and all you do is gaze into their eyes a little bit more. Maybe you just touch them a little bit lighter. Maybe we just slow down for a moment. Maybe at some point in the lovemaking, you just stop and you just hold the other person and say, can we just lie like this for a moment? Because it feels beautiful for you. And then the other person, maybe they have an experience that they hadn't had before. And they like it, right? We are always affected by each other. And again, not to say that, here are the tricks to trick your lover into having a spiritual experience. That's not what I'm saying. Well, I might be saying that. But do you know what I mean? There's it's always interesting to me that if I'm in a relationship and the other person really isn't wanting the exact same thing as I am, but I feel called to stay in the relationship, then I wonder, what else can I do? Right? What else can I do to have an epic experience here? And it's going to rub off on the other person, you know? The hardest thing is getting your partner to understand this, to release their constructs when they don't think they have any. Yeah. Yeah. It's, again, like it's so interesting when we really imagine what our intention is for lovemaking. And there's something really powerful about just looking at this other person and finding other things to love about them. Maybe they're full of constructs and full of intention and full of whatever. So we get bigger. I had a great teacher once, and she used to say, when things get hard, whatever you do, don't contract, expand. And maybe we can find other things that we just find so entertaining about this other person. And we think about how much we love that about them. Like crazy things happen when we're making love. Like you can just suddenly think of one thing about this other person or one thing they once said that is so fun and so joyful. And that energy comes into the lovemaking because you've thought of it, and then something crazy happens. Like sometimes the worst thing we can do is believe that it'll always be the same. And even for all of us here, like everybody that's live here, we're all on this spiritual journey. Like we're all really playing in this world, and we are changing. Like we are morphing. Our energy fields are morphing. Our physical bodies are morphing. Everything's morphing. So anyone that comes in contact with us, they're going to shift a little. They don't have a choice. Hey, Alan. Hey, Shimmy. Yeah. Hey, Natalie. Well, this has been great. For anyone watching this later, oh, hey. Hey, Shays. For anyone watching this now or later, I'm going to play with the banners here. And on my website here, I have all of my online courses in Tantra and my books. This is my book, Tantric Intimacy, which I wrote after I'd been teaching for some time and people really wanted to understand how this all worked together. And this is my foundations course in Tantric Intimacy that you can totally do at your own pace. And there's a couples version and one for individuals. My situation is complicated by health issues, and he has just walked away from all intimacy. Yeah, that's hard. That's where our current relationship and marriage structure fails us in this department, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for joining me. And we're going to be doing these talks every Wednesday. I'm taking the Wednesday off between Christmas and New Year's, but we're going to do these every Wednesday. So feel free in the comments section, if you ever have any ideas for an upcoming talk, I'd be more than happy to do it. I love speaking to ideas that people have. Makes it very real. Listening to your talks about Tantra gives me permission to feel more sexual. Right? I'm so glad. It's been so demonized within us. Oh, hey, Telekai. AKA. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful day or a wonderful evening wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you soon.